I am going to beat you into the living death.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Walkout Network. It's your man Ant Walker here with another edition of The Living Death. This is a special show, not only because we're talking about the aftermath of UFC 270, but because for the first time since we rebranded, we have a guest. Guy, I've been trying to get him on the show for a while, but we've always had schedule issues. But finally, we are on the same panel today. Mike Pendleton, you know him from My MMA News, formerly of Sirius XM, and a podcaster in his own right. Mike, pleasure to have you on. How you doing, my man?
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's actually my fault completely because I suck at responding sometimes, and I just lose focus at times. But over the last few months, things have been good, and I'm happy to be here.
Well, I mean, you're probably the only person in MMA media who has worse communication skills than me. So, thank you for taking the crown from me. I appreciate
I'll
it, Mike.
absolutely take the crown.
All right. So, of course, we have two gentlemen on the panel who you know very well. We see them every week. We love them every week. And let's go ahead and introduce them. First of all, is the jack of all trades who has mastered them all, the senior editor of SureDog.com, and my man Ben Duffy. Ben, what's up?
Hey, I'm doing real well. You know, obviously it was a wild weekend in combat sports, and I'm happy because I can have my Texans hat back on. Because you know, if you're looking at me right now, your team is probably at home too. So you know, like I'm safe putting the Texans hat back on.
All right. And of course, the panel is anchored every week by the man with the stats, the facts, the figures, and the numbers. He is the associate editor of SureDog.com and my good friend, Mr. Jay Petrie. Jay, what's up?
You know, I'm excited to be here, talk fights. I am very excited about our 5-person panel today. We have our second guest. She is very, very interactive, and I hope that she gives us some really interesting takes about Ngannou Gane. I know we're going to have a lot of fun there. First, I guess I'll throw out my stat of the week. It's not about Ngannou Gane because that didn't really have a lot of stat-worthy things to talk about besides Ngannou landing takedowns. So the stat of the week is 1. Because Deiveson Figueiredo and Brandon Moreno have fought 3 times in a row, back to back, both of them for against one another. And I know that sounds redundant, but no one's ever done that in the UFC before. We've had trilogies, we've had like Stipe Miocic fought Daniel Cormier 3 times in a row, but Cormier broke it up and he fought Derek Lewis. So this is the first automatic trilogy in UFC history where 2 fighters fought each other 3 times in a row. So 270 was historic for a lot of reasons, and that's a big one of them.
Absolutely. So we're definitely going to spend a good amount of time talking about the flyweight title fight. It was a banger between Deiveson Figueiredo and Brandon Moreno. But first up, the heavyweights did work. Ciryl Gane, unsuccessful in his quest to unite the UFC heavyweight titles. He dropped a unanimous decision to Francis Ngannou, who we at length talked about last week, his sort of butting heads relationship with the UFC as the negotiating table was not a friendly place to visit as they tried to get this fight done. And of course, maybe we should have saved this for I'm not surprised, but Dana White, a no-show at the post-fight press conference, also did not put the belt around Ngannou, left it to Mick Maynard. Man, what do we think about this? What does this say with Dana essentially ghosting Ngannou after his win?
I mean, I think it shows a certain amount of clear thinking and foresight on Dana's part. Because if he sent Sean Shelby out, he would have had to find a box to stand on.
Oh, okay, that's the end of it. I'm impressed. I guess that's a good part for laughter. I appreciate that. I was writing the play-by-play for SureDog, and I noticed that immediately when I saw the cage door open and Bruce Buffer was getting ready to do the cards. I'm like, that's not a shiny head in there with that belt. That's a Mick Maynard right there. And let me tell you, I was not surprised, Mr. Falcons, about that in any way. I thought about, okay, maybe I'll take it for the segment this week, but I thought we all are going to have really big takes on this because, oh my God, Dana's not doing the belt thing. Now, Dana doesn't always put the belt around the champion, doesn't always do that. Sometimes he reserves it for a celebrity in the crowd. Sometimes he just passes it off. I think when Stipe won the title from him in 220, I'm going to have to do to check on that. Maybe it's when he beat Cormier in the rematch. Anyway, one time recently when Stipe had the belt and defended it, Dana didn't wrap it around his waist. So I can't immediately look at it and go, oh, Dana was mad about that or whatever. But then you look at all the pictures of Dana at the event with all the jackass people. They were all smiling, taking pictures. So Dana was there. Dana was happy. He wasn't exploding. He wasn't what was that fake story that parody
the aneurysm
or something like that. That him not attending the post-fight presser, that was a lot more telling to me that he didn't attend that. Now, also, Dana doesn't always attend the pressers, but if it's a big pay-per-view, he does. If it's a big show, big crowd, whatever, he's there. He's there to talk about how many people showed up. He's there to talk about the big numbers. He's there to talk about pay-per-view buys where the pre-orders were in the hundreds of thousands. He's there for that. So when he wasn't there for that, that spoke volumes to me. And that said to me more of his frustration about the result of this fight. Not just that it wasn't exciting, but, oh my God, my big plan that we talked about last week, my plan to have Gane as the guy didn't work. And I think that told me something. Unless there's a break and suddenly Dana's come down with he's feeling verklempt and he had to go to something for a stomach issue. This was a very bad bit of PR, I think.
So Mike, if you could do me a favor, can I call you Mr. Falcons, and can you tell me whether or not you were surprised by Dana pulling an absentee?
Of course. First of all, I want to say this from earlier. We talked about the 5-person panel we have on. It feels good to not be the shortest person on a panel, so I really appreciate that. Listen, I was a bit surprised for the post-fight press conference part, but the belt, I actually, to be honest, to be very blunt, I don't care either way. I don't care who puts the belt on Francis. I don't care if Dana White shows up, and I'm not here to defend or die on the Dana White hill. But I mean, yes, media people expect Dana White, the president of the UFC, to answer questions, tough or not, COVID or not, Francis or not, after a big event. But I'm going to be honest, if I had to sit back and watch a 25, 30-minute Dana White Q&A, and 98% of it is about Francis, and people are not going to let up in the media room, I don't necessarily know that I want to watch it. Because, I mean, outside of the flyweight trilogy, I'm going to assume 98% of those questions were going to be about the future of Francis Ngannou. And we're going to get an agitated Dana White, and then someone's going to throw out a COVID question. It's not exactly what I want to hear. Francis got his time. He got his shine. And they would have made a huge statement if Francis didn't show up to that press conference. That would have been alarming for me, because technically he's not under contract after that fight. So they did that. They give him that platform. I'm not reading and buying too much into the whole Dana White putting the belt or attending the press conference. It definitely surprised me, but it's not an end-all be-all for me.
Mike makes a good point. If Dana had showed up to the presser and Francis had not been there, that would have been a much, much more shocking turn of events.
Yeah, that would have been something. I mean, we've seen Dana do things before, and maybe he didn't go as far as to not put the belt on certain people or no-show pressers, but I can definitely remember the looks on his faces when he would put the belt around Woodley whenever he successfully defended. I think I remember a couple of funny looks when DJ got the belt around him. There's definitely a precedent set. The only time I think that I can remember off the top of my head that he did something similar and it didn't come across as him looking petty, I would say it's probably when Anderson Silva did his routine on Damian Maia at UFC 112, and that you could see a clear provocation. Okay, our champion is acting like a fool right now, and I'm pissed because I'm trying to show off to our new investors. I get that, but man, it almost feels like you got to sit there and take your medicine. He played this game with Ngannou since he won that belt. He played this game denying him, the pay, trying to create some sort of interim belt to undermine him when he just needed another month to enjoy his victory tour. this is the climate he created. So it almost feels, I mean, I'll just use the word again. It feels really petty that, now it's backfired and here you are just disappearing when it's time to answer the questions, because guaranteed if Ciryl Gane went out there and lit a fire on Ngannou and snatched that belt from him in epic fashion, Dana White would have been up there with a big cheese grin, putting the belt on him and answering questions into the wee hours of the morning. So she agrees.
Yes, and she agrees, and I definitely do too. If you're going to take a victory lap, you should be there to take your lumps. And this is the president who is very, he always wants to be the most popular person in the UFC. He wants to be he wants to be bigger than any fighter. That's just the way he is. He doesn't want any fighter to be bigger than the brand. So to be able to get up there and do your thing and stave off the questions, I think that should be a part of it. Even if every question is going to be what's next for Ngannou, reworded in a slightly different way, where Dana goes, I already answered that question. Well, he should still have to do that in some fashion. I need to correct myself, because I look back while we were discussing this, and all of the heavyweight titles for the past several years, it's been Dana giving the belt to Cormier, 220 when I was in Boston in there. That's why I didn't remember that, because I was in the building, so I couldn't see down to see if it was Dana or whomever. It's always been Dana wrapping the belt around the heavyweight champion. As far as I look back through all the images, there's Dana White putting the belt around, happy or sad, whatever there he is. So it does make a note for me, because this is your baddest man on the planet. And we're definitely going to dovetail that into what we think is going to happen next to him. The UFC has always billed the heavyweight champion as the baddest man on the planet. That's their thing. They should almost catchphrase it or patent it or something. So now to take away from this guy, because he did the thing nobody expected, developed in a new way, fought, injured, and did all these crazy different things and body slammed a guy, we hate him now. The UFC dug itself into a hole by making the heavyweight champion the godlike character. Because if you're not going to sell this guy, you notice. We're very telling when you can think to an instance where Ngannou may play second fiddle if there's a Jon Jones fight, or if he's not fighting Ngannou, or if there's a Conor fight, or a Diaz fight, or a Masvidal fight. I can see Ngannou being the co-main event in a title fight, because of the way the UFC doesn't want to push this. So I take a lot from it from very little. To me, the silence, it was deafening to me.
Yeah, but before we go down the rabbit hole of what the future holds for Ngannou, let's take a couple moments to talk about the fight itself. Because this was a very interesting fight. When we sat down last week and gave our predictions, we did the same thing that just about everyone else has done in the build up to this fight. We talked about the potential striking match. We talked about what a kickboxing match between these two would look like, the power versus the technique, leg kicks and overhand rights and everything else in between. But one thing that we very briefly mentioned but didn't go into a lot of detail about was the grappling game. Like what would it look like if one or the other single leg or double legged and got this fight to the ground? What would happen then? Who would come out on top? What did you guys think about the quality of the fight and that sort of surprise in technique? Mike, I'll begin with you.
I guess I'll just start with, obviously I think a lot of people did feel Ciryl Gane had a kickboxing advantage. Obviously it was technique versus power. That was the entire storyline. But I'll just say this fight to me isn't about Gane or Ngannou. It's about the coaching staff. And they took a secondary spotlight leading into it with Fernand Lopez and Francis Ngannou, but credit the team that Francis has with Eric Nixick and Extreme Couture and Dewey Cooper to implement a game plan, especially after an injury, as they said, and then readjust in fight. I think, we talked about just the billing of the heavyweight champion and the baddest man on the planet. I think in order to be that, you have to be able to make those adjustments. And I think we saw one over a couple of years ago when Stipe Miocic defeated Daniel Cormier for the first time, going to the body. If you want to be that baddest man on the planet, you got to make these adjustments. And, we saw in the first Francis Stipe fight, Francis didn't even know what wrestling was. And that's when Ferdinand Lopez was on his team. So when you kind of saw, maybe from a coaching standpoint, and I can't speak for his coaches, but if they looked at Ferdinand Lopez's track record and it wasn't all wrestling based, and they knew they could implement Francis to use these newfound skills, I mean, for me, it was more about the coaching than it was about an individual fighter.
Very, very good point. The coaches definitely took a fair amount of attention away from the fighters themselves, and rightfully so, considering how things played out. Ben, what was your level of surprise to see Ngannou implement such a grappling heavy game plan?
I was extremely surprised. Obviously, like I did not expect it to play out that way, and the whole, like, all the jokes about, you know, D1 Ngannou, you know, Abu Dhabi Ngannou, they're a little overstated. I mean, he landed 4 takedowns. I don't even know if he landed 4 clean ground strikes. You know, no real submission attempts worth the mention, but just the fact that he was able to do that and really leveraged his absurd, enormous physical strength and explosion to be able to do that, it's got to be daunting. You know, the question I had for Keith, my co-host on the Sherdog recap, was, does this fight make you feel differently about a theoretic match between Ngannou and Jon Jones? It's like, yeah, it does. Yeah, I mean, it's not a polished tool yet, but just his willingness to go to it, the potential we see there. What my son, who was watching and texting me during the event, you know, said, like, look at that sand mine strength. As a side note, what the fuck even is a sand mine? How could you possibly need to mine for sand? That sounds like something from like a dystopian science fiction movie.
Well, I thought it
Anyway,
was salt.
they said sand. I know what a salt mine is. They said sand. I'm like, what the fuck is a sand mine? Maybe they misspoke.
I must have.
Jay, anything technique wise that stood out to you in that fight?
No, because I don't feel his wrestling, except for the sweep. The sweep in the 5th round where Gane was going for the heel hook and he scissor swept him. Yeah, sure. Day one, BJJ, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. Other than that, it was, I'm going to pick you up and you're going over here now. It wasn't as much of a, I'm going to hit go for a single and you know, go down the pipe and then lock my arms and shift my hips. No, this was, we're going over here. This is Matt Hughes style takedowns. This is up and over. And that worked because Ciryl Gane is only 250 pounds. And apparently you need to be more than that to not let Ngannou lift you up that time in the fight. I still, you know, I was on play-by-play and cover this. I can't recall how Ngannou landed the takedown against Stipe in their first fight, because that was, at the time, his first takedown was in the rematch with Stipe. I don't remember it amounting to much. I just remember it happening. So to see Francis Ngannou lean on his Division I Minnesota strength, Minnesota, Iowa, Minnesota, we'll go Minnesota style power wrestling. I was very amused because I came into this fight going, yep, Gane probably has the ability to, you know, body lock, you know, like an outside trip and just kind of crash down on him as he had done to a couple guys in the past. And that didn't happen at all. In fact, Gane found himself at a major strength disadvantage that he himself, you could see a few times when he'd land on the ground, aside when he got smacked on his head, that didn't count. You could see him go, oh crap, I couldn't stop that. I couldn't. The
Barnett getting scooped up by Cormier look on the face.
Yeah, like exactly an anvil sitting on his chest, and he had like, oh my god, this is so heavy.
Yeah, when Ngannou passed him out, just kind of stepped over. Gane is a very calm, composed guy. So when you see flashes of oh crap, it stuck out to me. So this, if anything, it told me we were right in one regard, that Gane should have had a little more seasoning. But at the same time, you know, you wonder if Ngannou could do that. Ngannou probably could do that against anybody in the division besides Curtis Blaydes. Like, let's be honest. He could lift them up and go, we're going this way. Maybe Alexander Romanov because he's a full 265 plus. But this it wasn't as much technique, but Mike was right on the money that the adjustments that he had made since going to Extreme Couture with Eric Nixick and the boy and Dewey Cooper and all the boys over there, outstanding. This was a different guy than 2, 3, 4 fights ago. And I think that is my biggest takeaway.
You know, one thing I'd like to add to that. I don't want to take anything away from what Ngannou pulled off because that was pretty amazing. The adjustments that he made and the difference in him now as opposed to just a few fights ago. But I think we need to point a little bit of the blame here at Gane and his approach from jump. Gane, in my opinion, he fought it like a sparring pace. It was a very almost like a friendly spar, even like he's just pot shotting and not really going for anything significant. It was like he was trying to slowly chip away, but not even with enough power to genuinely chip away.
And that's why I picked against him in most of his fights, because he didn't ever really seem to have that third or fourth gear, except for when he put Derek Lewis away. Anyway, carry on.
Yeah. Good point there. I mean, I was reminded of, indulge me for just a little bit down a rabbit hole here, but in one of the EA Sports Fight Night games, the boxing games, there was Teddy Atlas on the commentary in one of those games. If your boxer doesn't use a lot of power punches, at some point they program it for Teddy Atlas to talk about how you're fighting like you made a deal with your opponent that if you don't hit them hard, they won't hit you hard. And that's sort of the attitude it seemed like Gane had. It was like you could see the look in his eyes, like that Ford Escort was barreling toward him, and he did not want to get hit. And he didn't respond with power back. It was more a love tap. And hey, if I don't hit this guy too hard, maybe he'll take it easy on me. That's sort of the impression I got. But yeah, I wonder what that fight looks like with Gane having a more aggressive, more forceful approach as opposed to sort of the passive point fight style that he took on Saturday.
I don't know if he has. I mean, yes, he turned it up against Derek Lewis, but let's not forget at UFC 265 that it was that. It was exactly that. It was a tap, get away, circle away. Derek Lewis swings at nothing, and tap, kick, leg kick, work the body. I mean, Duffy, I think it was either your preview or when we were talking about it last week on this. It's the jab teep kick, a GSP Ian level of effective point fighting on a heavyweight level. And that's kind of what Gane brings to the table. Really solid fundamentals, but not the heavyweight power that we're accustomed to. And I think that is Ciryl Gane.
All right, Good point. All right, so fellas, now let's talk about what's next. Ngannou has made it very clear that he doesn't intend on fighting for the UFC unless things change. He is willing to. One, he's got a knee injury that's going to sideline him for at least several months. But he's prepared to sit out for a year in order to be done with his contract and move on. A boxing match with Tyson Fury is talked about a lot. Tyson Fury himself tweeted about it right after the fight. There are other MMA promotions out there. There are other boxers out there. What do you think is going to happen next with Francis Ngannou?
Well, I'm going to just say that I think there's so many layers to this to start off. I think right now at the top of the heavyweight division, there should be about 3 people super excited about the immediate future. And that's Jon Jones, if he's ready to fight, Stipe Miocic, and Curtis Blaydes. Not to make this like public knowledge, but, because I didn't do it from a journalistic standpoint, but I quickly reached out to Curtis Blaydes, asked him what he thought, of the main event. He just said, I wasn't impressed. And you talk about a guy who has really shown a lot of dominant skill at the top of the division outside of his fights against Francis Ngannou. Gane's not going to be right back in the title picture. Depending on what's going on with Stipe and Jon Jones, I think Curtis Blaydes finds himself in a unique opportunity here. But, the question being about Francis, this goes back to the whole conversation we started here. And I think the UFC, like you made your bet, now you gotta like lay in it, like with Francis Ngannou. So either now you let a champion, and I think it goes all the way back for me. It's the way they promoted him. You know, giving him that title, baddest man on the planet, scariest dude on the planet. Now he's got the belt, so the belt and that title go hand in hand. And I think for Francis, he allowed the UFC to grab him early on and just let them do his marketing for them. And then as he got bigger and better, he got a good management team. He got new coaches, and they started to open his eyes a little bit. So now he's speaking out, and he's doing all these things, and it's red flags all around from the UFC standpoint. You know, it's interesting because I think he's not on the contract. So could he just focus on getting healthy, box Tyson Fury, and then come back? I think he could. I think he could, but it seems like Francis wants to stick it to them, get a new deal because I'm the champion. You can't deny me that. How bad would that look if you guys just let me walk? And so you're not going to let me walk. I want my boxing clause. So we may be facing a situation where Francis doesn't fight for a year and a half under the UFC, but could be one of their most marketable fighters. I do think he will fight again in the UFC, but I wonder if it's in over a year, maybe closer to 2 years before we see him compete again.
Yeah, good points there, Ben. Or Jay. Who's up first to tell me about the future for Ngannou from your perspective?
I tend to agree with Mike here, and my initial thoughts leading into the fight and in the immediate aftermath were that Ngannou would end up coming to some sort of compromise with the UFC sooner rather than later. However, like a couple of things played out here. One, he retained his title, but he didn't do it in a fashion that really increases his stock as a boxing crossover. Like if he had just starched Gane, like the drum would have started beating for, you know, a Fury fight or, you know, the Deontay Wilder fight that you and brought up, and you know I certainly think is more competitively appropriate. But still, you know, I'm hearing from, you know, people who, you know, can't or won't go on record that he's pretty serious about waiting this thing out. I mean, think of it this way. Like, say he does get a boxing clause and it's anything like the Conor McGregor one, where the UFC just flat out takes half. He could still go fight Tyson Fury. The UFC could take half, and that would still probably be more than he's made in his entire tenure in the UFC. It's entirely possible that would be the case. So I think the UFC has a fairly strong position here just because Ngannou's options are sort of limited. Like he can definitely go get a huge payday boxing, but he may not be able to get more than one because the interest in a second big boxing match after Tyson Fury just completely clowns him, it just won't be there. So yeah, I think the UFC and Ngannou are just gonna kind of grudgingly and grumblingly come to some sort of agreement. And like Mike says, maybe 12 to 18 months down the road, we see his name on a UFC marquee again.
That's why you start with the Wilder fight, so you can extend the lifespan of your boxing career.
It's kind of what I was thinking about if Ngannou were to go over to boxing. It's a novelty if you have him fight Tyson Fury, because he would get shellacked. Like, think of all the things that Ciryl Gane
it would be
did.
like McGregor Mayweather. Like the difference in technique would be such that, like, if it went 6 rounds, it would be because Fury carried him.
Yes, I think therein lies the problem. If you put him in against the best guy out there or one of the top 2, you know, heavyweights out there, well, he will get destroyed. Like, look at what Ciryl Gane was able to do to him on the feet. It was not, you know, Gane didn't flush absorb a ton of punches to the face or body, and that's all you can do in boxing. There's no kicking, there's none of that footwork, and you can't do that whole pick him up and toss him over there kind of thing. So Francis Ngannou would be a fish out of water in the boxing ring because his style is more power oriented, and when you go against a boxer who is technically able to go, hey, I see that coming, pop pop, bang, slip the thing, whatever. So he should fight somebody, if he's going to box, fight somebody he can smoke. That's still kind of a name, maybe an older name, but it doesn't make us feel bad. Like, don't put him against like a Holyfield. I'm not talking about that murderous thing. I'm talking about like an older, you know, 38, respected. I can't think of a name off the top of my head. That's why I'm
They
struggling.
tried to
here.
make Kubrat Pula fight Frank Mir.
Yeah,
Mike's
that-
got one.
What do you got,
Mike's
Mike?
got one.
I got two. What about
Please.
King Kong, Luis Ortiz, or how about Andy Ruiz?
Fine.
Yep.
Great.
Luis
Great.
Ortiz, another name that I threw out there last
It-
week. Mike is on to something here.
Yes, that's a great
And,
name.
and Andy Ruiz, that's a good call too, because the
Yes.
visual difference.
That's
in
exactly
that
why I thought
would be
Ruiz.
such a selling point.
That's perfect.
And Andy Ruiz would need that, right? Like,
Yeah.
he's a guy who he's not Wilder, he's not Joshua, he's not Fury, he's none of the top elite. Yeah, he's held the belt before, but you could debate that all day long if what state Anthony Joshua was in when he had that fight. But now we have a former champion. You could build it as that former heavyweight champion. And Andy Ruiz, if you can come in and say, this UFC guy is coming into my world, this MMA, this mixed martial artist is coming into my world, and people kind of forgot who I was. Well, if I put on a performance, if I beat this guy, he's clearly got no space in this boxing world. And Tyson Fury, I just took out your trash for you.
It's
And
King Hip versus Mr. Sandman.
And Ruiz would absolutely beat the brakes off Ngannou. Let's just make that absolutely clear. And it would look so funny, but
It
would
wouldn't
beat
be
the
as-
brakes off of him.
It wouldn't be as bad as a Fury. That's what because Fury would embarrass him. That's the difference.
I mean, Fury figured out Wilder and was
Yes.
embarrassing him.
Yes. That's exactly why I
You
say to the level of that. So if he were to box, Ngannou should be the name fight a name that's respectful. Because if you lose badly to Fury right out of the gate, you go top. You're the UFC champion, and then they have the stupid press conferences, and Dana White says he's the reigning defending heavyweight champion, even though he's not defending anything because he's going to boxing. Then you have something to go with for one fight, and then it's over. The gravy train's gone.
I
and
have
then
a bold
you're toast.
prediction.
I am interested.
If Francis Ngannou fights Tyson Fury, Ngannou will miss on a punch so badly that he'll fall down at least once.
I wouldn't be surprised if he's the one who ends up hitting himself in the boxing match. Like it's not a good idea. It's a cash grab. If he does it the way it sounds like he's going to do it, and I don't really care for those cash grabs because then you're taking time away. But going back to what we initially thought, I don't see Ngannou fighting in the UFC in 2022 again. I think bare minimum he's 6 months to rehab the knee. He's a 290-pound guy. He's got to take some time to recover, rehab, and be fully all good on his MCL, torn MCL and damaged, I think is what it said. ACL, I think is the official diagnosis. So he needs time to recover, regardless of contract, anything like that. There's a 6 month he's out for that. So then we put it in more July or so. Maybe they want to do like if the best thing I think the UFC would be hoped for is like a November MSG card, like Jones and Ngannou. That's the one. That's the dream for the UFC,
and that's super ambitious.
And that is wildly ambitious.
Right.
But that is the dream. The reality, Ngannou sits out. He might sit out long enough to end the champion clause, and then the UFC takes his belt, because the UFC will want to take his belt. But my prediction, I would say by June, the UFC will create another interim belt for heavyweight.
Jay, you just read my mind. I literally just had this conversation with Kristen right before we started recording. That this is the scenario that I see happening with the UFC. This knee injury is going to be all the basis they need to create an interim title. It's going to be if Derek Lewis beats Tai Tuivasa, it's going to be between Jon Jones and Derek Lewis, because that way either person wins. You have one guy who the UFC can say that you can say, oh, he ducked Jon Jones. They could put that narrative out there. And with Derek Lewis, if he wins, then you can say, okay, well, this guy has a win over our now, discarded champ. So he's not really the champ.
I like it, but I'm gonna twist it a little bit because I'm not entirely sure that'll set. I don't know if the ink would dry. I'm going to say Stipe versus Lewis for the interim belt. Then they still have the angle of both guys have beaten Ngannou. Just because the Jones thing, I just don't feel that Jones is going to fight. I don't feel it.
I think I have my doubts about Jones at heavyweight because we've been talking about this for 5 years and it hasn't happened, but longer than that even. But it seems like Jones would be the lesser of two evils as far as who's challenging the UFC status quo. You go with Jones because He's not that bright. And he's someone who has continually messed up on his own right and has put himself in a bad negotiating position several times over, including relinquishing the light heavyweight title before committing fully to this heavyweight move. So he's done some things in an awkward order. You probably have a better chance of taking advantage of him than you do of any other scenario. And Stipe has had his issues with the UFC, and you still don't have that visual of Jon Jones being laid flat by Ngannou very recently.
Yeah, I would say for me, I'm not playing like bias here or anything, but did we all forget like Jon Jones's last fight? Like depending on who you ask, he lost that fight. And here we are, we're playing a waiting game. And it's, you could be the homecoming queen, but you're not the prom queen anymore, Jon Jones. Like we're happy to have you and we'd love to see you as an attraction, but until you step into the cage, like there's no place for you right now. And you can sit behind Twitter all day long. Drake would make more songs about your Twitter fingers. That's fine. But like, seriously, I can't get over this fact that it's like, his name is Jon Jones, so we're just going to give him whatever he wants. We've seen this already. And the best part about giving a fighter what he wants when he may or may not deserve it is we get end results of Charles Oliveira becoming the champion, right? Like that's exactly what we did with Conor McGregor. We gave him everything he wanted, and we allowed him to take time off and fight anybody he wanted and do whatever he wanted. And Charles Oliveira is not a lightweight champion. We have no idea if Conor is going to fight ever again. Same thing with Jon Jones. If we're going to allow Jon to move at his own pace and do his own thing, and we eventually know he's going to get in some type of legal trouble that makes us look better than he's ever going to make himself look, well, then let's start focusing on those that are there. Yes, Derek Lewis is there. But again, I'm going to go back to the two names I mentioned earlier, and that's Stipe and Curtis Blaydes, still at the top of their game. I mean, I would take any three. You can put them any way you want. I would take Stipe Jon. I would take Curtis Jon. I would take Curtis Stipe. Like, let's get some movement here at the top, because again, this division has also been held up over the past 4.5 years because of Daniel Cormier and Stipe. So like, I want to see the best of the best in this division. And if you're gonna create an interim belt and you're gonna have this public feud with your reigning champion, well, then let's give the people at the top, an opportunity that they deserve.
I love Curtis,
damn good
it's
points.
really
Yeah,
hard to sell a third fight though. That's the hardest part. Is 2 knockouts to the champion. It's been since like 2018, so it is fairly removed, but it's still a trilogy match with somebody coming in with 2 losses, trying to win the third. That doesn't happen very often. It's like what was it, Rampage and Vanderlei was one of the few that it actually something happened. Unlike Edgar and Tiptoe's pen, that it doesn't always go well.
But I mean, we're also living in an era where a losing streak can warrant you a title shot. So.
It does, but remember, fighters can't just come back at a new weight class and jump the line.
No,
isn't that
that's
what
not how
the
this
UFC
works.
Isn't that not how this works?
Absolutely not how this works. All right, fellas. Well, let's go ahead and give some love to the co-main event, which was actually the focus of this week's stat of the week. So, the fourth fight between Deiveson Figueiredo and Brandon Moreno is what's next for the flyweight title picture.
Can before you guys answer the question, I know you're going to say it, I'm going to go the other way. I don't want to see it yet. I don't feel that Brandon Moreno deserves an immediate rematch by losing a fight in his first defense, even though it was a great fight, even though it was a blast. I do want to see them fight again, and I'm fully aware that Deiveson Figueiredo is 34 years old in a division that is unkind to fighters above the age of 35. But I love the trilogy. I love the way it played out. I enjoyed every minute of it. The ebbs, the flows, the what ifs, the breaking it down has always been a blast. But I don't feel that we're going to get anything out of it if we make them fight in 6 months. I don't feel we're going to get a different fight. We'll get a very close fight, assuming the weight cut's good to go. And why do I know that? Because as Duffy said, last week, we're going to get one of two narratives. We're going to get the first fight was real because they're very closely matched. They're right on the money. They're power for power, skill for skill, or it'll be that something's wrong and Moreno overpowers him and gets the win. Well, we learned from this third fight that it was the first fight was more true to form and how it played out. but I'm ready for Figueiredo to fight another contender. And then Moreno can work his way back up the ladder, because at some point there has to be some movement in the division. And I feel there are some worthy contenders working their way up that could be really fun. Who wouldn't want to see Deiveson Figueiredo and Kai Kara-France slug it out? And then we can work our way back towards something. But I just feel immediate rematches should be special. And I feel like we're out. We've cashed all those tickets. Now, guys, tell me why I'm wrong.
I'm gonna tell you why you're right. I don't see any problem with anything you laid out, Jay, simply because I hate the immediate trilogy fights most of the time, and this turned out to be very entertaining. But especially in a division that's devoid of a lot of big names and a lot of big contenders, let's preserve what's left of Brandon Moreno as a title contender instead of throwing him out there against Figueiredo. And if he loses again, then you just completely burnt that bridge. And then if he wins, then okay, we're gonna run it back for a fifth time. I mean, at what point does it just stop and these two have to like see other people before they get back together? That's just kind of the way I feel about it. Mike or Ben, tell me why Jay and I are both wrong.
I'll go. I mean, you know that I'm normally the one on this. I mean, none of us love immediate title rematches, but I'm usually the one who squawks about them the loudest. So I can't believe I'm advocating for this, but I actually don't hate it if they do the fourth fight next. I mean, in a just world, we get probably Moreno can go fight Pantoja to be on deck, and Figueiredo can take on the winner of Askarov and Kai Kara-France. I mean, in a just world, that works. You could flip it, except that Figueiredo has already beaten Pantoja fairly recently. But here's the thing. I picked Figueiredo to win this fight, and he did win this fight. But if they fight again in 6 months, I'm picking Moreno. That's the reason I want this to happen now, is I think Deiveson Figueiredo is about to fall off a cliff. And I think when it happens, it's going to happen quickly. He did not have the power advantage in the cage, at least not in terms of functional power. Like, the ratio of his power to Moreno's chin was less than the ratio of Moreno's power to Figueiredo's chin. I think Figueiredo's chin is going to go away, and when it happens, it's going to go away quickly. I think it happens within maybe his next two fights. So if they send them off to do other things, there's every chance that Figueiredo just gets starched, and we never see this rivalry like completely play out. And I want to see him fight again. Like Jay pointed out in his Fight Facts column after this event, that yeah, this is the first like immediate consecutive trilogy in UFC history. It's also the only one in UFC history where all three fights have gotten post-fight bonuses of some kind. Like, they've been exciting fights. Yeah, I just, from a narrative standpoint, you know, we're seeing something historic happen, and it would be a real damn shame if the UFC robbed us of that in the interest of fair competition. Like, all of a sudden, like you know, why turn on a dime now? Just, you know, like give us a spectacle fight.
And Mike, before you chime in, I just want to ask a quick favor of Jake. Jake, if you know off the top of your head, or if you could look it up really quickly, and of all the trilogy fights that have happened in the UFC, have there been any that all three fights had different results?
Like winner, lose, or draw kind of thing, or
Right.
like
Yeah, like different winner and a draw or split decision or whatever the case may be, like the different results.
yeah, I'll
And I would say for me, I'm going to agree with you, Jay. I think you can't run it back right now. I would also kind of bring up in my mind, did Deiveson Figueiredo kind of blow his emotional load going into this fight? Because he talked about, you know, getting Moreno's head for Henry Cejudo and getting his belt back and all of that. Well, like, all right, now you achieved the mountaintop. And, you know, yes, the first fight was a draw and Brandon got the second one, but now you've got a new team and you've done all that. So he may not feel Brandon Moreno is worthy of a fourth fight. I mean, he pretty much said that after the fight. You know, he's ready for new opponents. I would caution Deiveson Figueiredo to be careful what he wishes for. I do think we're getting to a point in this division, especially with that, you know, title eliminator between Askarov and Kai Kara-France, that, you know what, maybe there's real legitimate title contending threats out there, and it's not just going to be these two guys going back and forth over the past 2-3 years. I don't know if we're going to see that, and I think the flyweight division is getting very, very good. And the most intriguing part about this division to me is, quite frankly, a lot of people just don't know. Like, what not a lot of people know and buy into what the flyweight division has. So we may, for shock value, get a fight between Figueiredo and, let's just say, Kai Kara France. And yeah, he could ride off of the Cody Garbrandt knockout, but if he goes in there and does what he did to Garbrandt against Figueiredo, now we're like, wait, who is this guy? Not us, but the general population of UFC fans. And it just continues to build intrigue rather than go, all right, we saw Moreno and Figueiredo, we saw Moreno. And I would just want the door open for new competition.
Definitely good point there, Mike.
Maynard Edgar. Maynard won the first, Drew, and then Edgar won the third.
Oh, beautiful work, Jay. Thank you. I knew I was forgetting something, man. You are the man with the stats, the facts, the figures, and the numbers. All right, fellas. So let's keep things pushing here because we're going to move on to a segment that means we need to break out our seasonings, break out the butter for the pan, get your sea salt, get your cracked pepper, get your paprika, get whatever you like to make your food flavorful. It's time to ask that age-old question: how's taste my crow? Ben, I'm going to start with you this week. How's taste my crow?
Oh, I didn't do too bad on the UFC card. I went 7-4 on the night, but the ones that I got wrong, oh shit, did I ever get them wrong? I was shocked to see Victor Henry just run through Hani Barcelos. Like, I mean, I have been high on Hani Barcelos' ceiling and upside to the point that, like, Jay makes a running joke out of it. But I mean, up to this point, he'd really only lost to the best of the best, and it seemed like the only thing holding him back was his own very sporadic work schedule. His history of injuries, his layoffs. But here, Victor Henry came in and put on a clinic. And while I'm excited to have Victor Henry in the UFC, always good to have, like, more extreme metal walkouts, get a Josh Barnett disciple in there. But and I thought his upside would probably consist mostly of his grappling. So to see him just soundly outstrike Hani Barcelos for 3 rounds, it was an eye-opener for me. I don't mind being wrong, because I usually learn something. I learned something here about both guys. So yeah, I'll take that crow. It's mongoose-flavored crow.
All right, Mike, how's taste my crow this week?
Yeah, I hate when I'm wrong because the crow tastes absolutely trash. And, listen, I respect, and I have to say this because, I don't want people to think I'm the only person I truly hate in combat sports. And I can't even say this because he's shut me up multiple times now, is Jake Paul. But I pretty much dogged Michel Pereira on my podcast doing my preview show for UFC 270 about how I just want you to fight. Like, please just be a fighter. And I get all the stuff and the acrobatics of it all. It's fun and it's enticing. But I was like, this is the third fight, leading into 2 title fights. Like, I get it. We lost a bunch of fights on the card and that kind of played a role in where this fight was. But like, we're giving Michel Pereira this, like, just this platform and we're saying it's okay to do all these crazy things. But like, you're just going to really just keep getting in these fights. And I really thought that, he had met his match, and there it was, eating my crow Saturday night, just going, all right, more spinning stuff and crazy flips. And it's just one of those ones where it's like, respect to him for getting the job done in the way that he gets the job done. It's funny because I say this, but I love Michael Venom Page and the way he fights. I don't know. I don't know. I think my exact quote on my podcast was, I'm cool with you doing what Pereira and Michael Venom Page do in the cage if you're breaking skulls like Venom Page has. If you're breaking skulls, I'm okay with it. But if you're fighting to decisions and doing all this and you're not really facing upper echelon in your division, like, all right, like, I'm not in. But here we are again. He gets a victory, and I got to deal with more acrobatic gymnastics during cage fights. It's great.
I love it. Jay, how's taste my crow this week?
So I'm going to generalize a little bit because I've tried to cook with the cuisine, but I can't quite lock down what its flavor would be. So I'm going to, even though I know that location is several hundred miles away. I'm gonna mix in a little bit of coriander, some paprika, a little bit of dill, garlic powder. We're gonna make some Montreal steak seasoning for O Canada, because when I saw the Kay Hansen Jasmine Jasudavicius fight, I knew that Hansen would be at a wide size disadvantage, but I thought she would be the kind of fighter. She got her head right. She got her everything in order. Okay, flyweight, sometimes, you move up a division. Sometimes you're trying to figure out the weight cut, and other times it's because, for whatever reasons. I came into this fight thinking, okay, Kay Hansen's going to play to her strengths, get on the inside, bully around the taller, longer Jasudavicius, and maybe take her down, scoop her up, whatever, that kind of stuff, bully her dirty box. And she did none of that, and was thoroughly outsized, thoroughly outstrength, thoroughly out everything. And oh Canada, my Canada, she did the darn thing. And in what is most fascinating, and I think Kay Hansen is eating a little bit of crow for this. I don't know if she can afford to, because she's moving down in weight to 115 right after this fight. It might be like crow light. Okay, we'll go with that.
And she was also out mulleted. Did you see the Canadian passport on that dude in Jasmine's corner? Whoa. Beautiful.
I thought she doesn't train with Shea Bears MMA, so I'm surprised with that mullet was powerful.
Yeah.
I think she's like from Niagara region, so I guess there's a mullet up there too.
Yeah. Well, this week my house tastes my crow. It's gonna be really fattening. It's gonna be very fattening. Just drop the crow right in the shortening. And then we're gonna put some compound butter on it, and when it's all done and ready to be consumed, because my biggest battle was going to be Figueiredo versus the scale. That was the biggest fight for me over the weekend. And after we recorded our show, the pre-fight press conference came on like a couple days later. And the way Figgy looked on that stage, he looked horrible to me. His face was sunken in, and he was just rambling on like a madman. I didn't realize at the time, when I went on Twitter and was like, I want to switch my pick, I didn't realize that it was Waleed Ismail that was in his ear telling him what to say, which is why he was all riled up. But he still looked bad.
I mean, any man would sound crazy if you're saying what Waleed Ismail is putting in your ear.
With sunglasses on, putting your phone up to your microphone, trying to play a song.
Just standing next to Waleed makes you feel crazy. And I've stood next to him, and it made me feel completely insane. So I thought, like, oh my God, Figgy's unhinged. He's this weight cut is tearing him up, and he's gonna lose. So I was like, I wanted to switch my pick. I was wrong. I should have stuck with my original pick of Figueiredo, although I do think the weight cut affected his ability to throw power and his ability to absorb it as well.
Yes, so that is right on the money. And what I to circle back real quick to what Duffy had said earlier, that when Figueiredo landed, he was able to knock Moreno off his feet. He got 3 knockdowns. But when Moreno landed on him, he hurt him. He stung him. He caught him and made, whoa, where'd that come from? And so that was telling to me, which also tells me maybe that weight cut was good, but a lot of water drained around the brain here.
Yeah, seemed just a little strange to me. All right, fellas, now it's time to move on to the best title segment in all of media history. I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons. This is where we share something that surprised us or ironically did not over the course of the past week. We will begin with our special guest this week, Mike. What's your I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons?
Well, I'm guessing it's because what I said before the recording started that I get first crack at it, but I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcon. I'm very surprised with Ciryl Gane's kind of response to the way he lost the fight, saying that he wasn't surprised that Ngannou chose a wrestling heavy attack, grappling attack. Like, okay, and if I was married and I saw my wife with 3 dudes, I also wouldn't be surprised that she tells me she wants a divorce. Like, it's just there. You had nothing else to say at that point. Like, yeah, when you get out wrestled, it's not like you're like, I was expecting, high kicks and spinning kicks and jump kicks. Like, no, dude, you lost that way. So just acknowledge that you lost that way. No one besides maybe Francis and his corner expected, 1, the fight to go to a decision, or 2, for Francis to have a wrestling focused attack, especially late in the fight. We didn't even know he had this arsenal. But all of a sudden, Ciryl Gane, who they weren't even teammates, they were sparring partners, if you ask Francis Ngannou. Ciryl Gane knew it. how did he know it? Because Ferdinand Lopez shows that, that's not a great wrestling attack there in France. It's not like they go to work and they beat him into the ground with wrestling there. So I was just like, there's nothing else you can say. Like, yeah, I knew the guy holding a gun to my head was going to steal everything from me. Really? You think? Ciryl Gane? Like, I get so and I'm like more pissed off about that than like Dana not putting the belt on, Francis not showing up to the press conference. I'm more pissed off about that than Francis not having a contract right now. Like, it's so bad. It's like one of those things we do in combat sports so often. And the other one that pisses me off is like, go back to December in box, Tyron Woodley threw the fight against Jake Paul. And then we've got these like Twitter, like mega analysts who are like breaking down. Look at the way he dropped his hand. And like, he clearly like, stop. Like, you lost the fight the way you lost it, accept it. And like, I would want more accountability from Ciryl Gane in that moment. Not saying, oh, I knew this is what he was going to do. You had no idea this is what you were going to do. And thanks for getting me fired up. Now I'm ready to run through a wall.
But now I'm fired up too, because it's the weirdest flex. Like, if you were expecting it, that makes it even worse that you couldn't stop it.
Yeah.
This is the like you can't quit because you're fired sort of thing. Like,
yeah.
Yes.
I resign.
I'm leaving you. Well, no, I was already. My stuff's in my car. I'm moving out.
That's Gane and his wrestling coach after the fight.
Like, UFC 270 needs to just be retitled to like Take Your Lumps or something. Like, seriously, I don't understand.
Yeah, not a good look from Gane on that podium. All right, Jay, what's your I'm not surprised Mr. Falcons moment this week?
So I thought about going international, but nah. 270 is the big story. It's the big pay-per-view. I don't care what happened to an LFA or in some other minor organization doing whatever they did this past week.
You care what happened to LFA more than all but about 20 people on the entire planet.
I know, and if I'm saying I don't care about it,
and 6 of them work for LFA.
Yes, exactly. So UFC 270 took place in California, and that is interesting because, as we recall, Nevada is no longer a state that discloses fighter salaries. Considering 95% of all UFC cards take place in Las Vegas, they don't have to disclose salaries anymore. So it's always a breath of fresh air when UFC goes to a jurisdiction that allows the salaries to be disclosed publicly, because honestly, it's a matter of public interest and, helps us tell the stories we tell. So the salaries came out. We knew, it's actually kind of funny. When Francis Ngannou was saying, I deserve to make more than $600,000 a year, we're like, well, that's an oddly specific total. Maybe he's just throwing a number out there. No, that's exactly as much as he made, which is funny to me. But the reason I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons, is because we were fully aware that the UFC upped its rookie minimum to $12,000 to show, $12,000 to win on any new signee for the UFC. Like Pete Rodriguez, the 4-0 dude from Icon FF, made $12,000 when he got his face punched out. But Dana White's Contender Series signees are not part of that rookie minimum. And this past season, multiple fighters like Simon Oliveira, Gennaro Valdez, and Michael Morales, and Jack Della Maddalena all were Dana White signees. They only made 10-10. So the UFC found a way to, exploit a loophole in their rookie minimum and still pay fighters 10-10. So here we are, fighter pay showing up. UFC is the most profitable 3 quarters they've ever had, and they're actively paying fighters less than the rookie minimum that they said they were going to raise it to. I am not surprised, Mr. Falcons.
Well, I typically would pass the reins over to Ben right now and save my I'm not surprised for last, but I think it's more appropriate for me to jump the queue really quickly here, because keeping in mind with fighter pay, if you are an athlete and you have representation, you'd expect that representation to do this strange thing called representing you. And that brings us to focus on one Brian Hamper, who works for Suckerpunch Entertainment, a pretty big management company. They've got quite a few notable fighters on their roster. This is what he tweeted out just several hours ago. Everyone arguing about fighter pay, I challenge you and your buddies to pool your money together and run a show. With all the millions you expect everyone to be paid, it's got to be super profitable. 2, which understandably several folks who follow this MMA space, including friend of the show, your colleague at SureDog.com, gentleman, Josh Gross, tweeted, "I don't understand this tweet coming from a certified MLB PA agent and MMA fighter rep. Do you actually mean there's no space for the UFC to share more of its revenue with fighters? And moreover, if people don't like the status quo, that's too bad." That's all I get from this. Great take on that, Josh. The idea that MMA managers are out here caping for the UFC instead of their clients, I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons. This happens all the time. And what I find actually genuinely surprising about this, that when it was time to go ahead and take his lumps, as the theme of the show is today, Mr. Hamper decided that it would be good to just nuke the whole Twitter account. His account no longer exists. And to which Mr. Gross did a little more investigating, and he got in touch with I'm going to mispronounce his name, Brian Butler, who runs Sucker Punch, claims that Mr. Hamper's Twitter account has been hacked since Friday, and they're working diligently to get it back. So that's what's up.
Can I just drop a hammer here? So the explanation, and this is Josh Gross, who is, the OG of OGs when it comes to reporting and review and analysis, contacted Sucker Punch directly and spoke to Butler and spoke to Hamper, who both claimed that his Twitter had been hijacked by those that were, I think it was like an organization for athletes against mandates or something about vaccine, that it was hacked and they were acting maliciously on behalf while typing all these things to him, and that he did not have access to his account. And then he claimed he deleted his account to not be, once this blew up, he deleted his account. See, here's the thing. When your Twitter account is hijacked and you can't access it, you don't have the access to delete your account. So I'm no doctor. We're
I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night, and that motherfucker's lying.
We're going to have to hear more about this one, because if you just so happen to, so either you just got your account right back, oh crap, and I delete everything, or what? I don't understand.
Caitlin Chikagi's like, you can do that?
Yeah. So there are holes in this story that I am looking forward to never hearing anything more about again.
Yeah, I'm no doctor, but I watch the Joe Rogan podcast.
I'm not a doctor. I'm just an attorney. What the hell do I know?
Can I just add
Please?
real quick?
Absolutely.
Like, it's only this sport. It's only MMA. Like, me being a big football fan, like if Aaron Rodgers would have said I'm immunized on Twitter, he would have been dragged, and he could have been like, I got hacked. But like, he said it like on a press conference in front of media, and we have video of it and all this. MMA is the only sport where like your top fighters or your Caitlin Chukagians of the world, everyone can get hacked and no one's got an explanation for it. It blows my mind that the UFC and the MMA is right there with the NFL and the NBA as far as popularity. Yeah, and it is so ass backwards when it comes to excuses from the athletes and those involved in the sport. Like, yeah, sorry, I know we have a rookie scale, but like as Jay pointed out, we don't really follow that, and we have like a personal conduct policy for fighters like Jon Jones, but we don't really. Hey, here's a clip of Conor McGregor attacking a bus. Please give us $75 next month. Like, it makes no sense. This is the only sport that is like this.
Yeah. MMA is like the car from Idiocracy with the giant purple dildo waving around on the hood. That is this sport.
If the fighters were paid more, they could afford McAfee virus protection on all their devices.
That's all it would take. Although I am happy Jung Hyun Ko got his account back. He was hacked, legitimately hacked.
Yeah, shout out to John. That's another guy we got to get on the show. So we'll
definitely,
John, reach out to you soon. All right, Ben, please share with us your I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons this week.
Well, after all of that, like mirth and recreational outrage, I'm sad to pull this back to something serious. But if you've been watching this sport for long enough, the name Michael Falcone might be familiar to you. You know, he was in the UFC for a hot minute. He was in Bellator, where he made it all the way to a title shot against Alexander Shlemenko, I believe it was. His nickname was Big Rig. With a name like that, I hope he opened a churrascaria at some point. But he is dead. Dead of a very grisly stabbing. I mean, the details are out there on SureDog as well as every other MMA site right now. So he is dead. Just 40 years old. He fought as recently as like last October or November or something. I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons, because the most memorable thing about him, other than, maybe the Shlemenko fight and his fight with Gerald Harris, was his part in just this massive gas station brawl that came out on video. And you just see, some people were permanently maimed in that. And that ended up contributing to not really his ouster from the UFC, but his difficulty getting bookings going forward, because it affected like his ability to get visas to fight in the US and so forth. Just kind of derailed his career, but it looks like he was kind of a troubled person, or a person who sought and found trouble. And, I mean, rest in peace, but yeah, not surprised. And, farewell, Michael Falcon.
Definitely sad news. Tragic end to a pretty bizarre story, just in general, of the twists and turns that his life and career took. So definitely want to send our condolences to his friends, family, and loved ones. All right, gentlemen. So not a whole lot of fight action going on this week. Aside from Bellator's got 273 coming up. The main event features Ryan Bader and Moldanovsky. Any thoughts about this fight in particular, or the card in general?
If I could, I'll be running play-by-play on this. Okay. I'm going to not pull punches. This miserable excuse of a card that I can't believe Bellator is limping to the gates, and this card in a rare weekend where there is no UFC counter programming it. And this is the best that Bellator could muster. This is the absolute top of the top that they could put together. A fight that we don't really care about anymore, because Ryan Bader hasn't fought at heavyweight in how long? I think since he poked Chet Congo in the eye over 2 years ago or something like that, against Moldavsky, and a fighter who can't finish a sandwich. Well, no, he finished the sandwich, but that's about all he can finish in the cage. It's not great. When Benson Henderson moving back down to lightweight, I am a WEC never die, bros. I supported Ben Henderson during his lightweight title run, if that gives you any indication. I scored the fights in favor of Benson Henderson. I was one of 4 people that did. Long losing streak, long clear losing streak against good guys. I mean, he moved up to 170. That didn't work. He moved back to fought Brent Primus. That didn't work. So he's fighting, I don't know, an incredibly dangerous Dagestani grappler in Islam Mammadov, which is 21-1 or something like that. And it's going to be a bummer. And that's the co-main event. And it doesn't get much better from there. You go, oh, okay, Henry Corrales. Oh, cool, right. Sabah Hamasi, Jaleel the Realist Willis. Okay, oh, okay, that's, Darian Caldwell's going to do whatever. He blankets Enrique Barzola, and then, we kind of shrug our shoulders. And when this is a best-case scenario, shrug your shoulders and go home, it's not a good look. Bellator is trying to be the number 2. And I get, this is the COVID era still. You can't always get the big mega shows, but I don't recall any big fights falling off this card. So I think this is, let's do this. Let's put it together. Let's go to Phoenix and put on a show in front of fans. And here you go. That's what we got. Hey, Phoenix, Arizona people, you like Ryan Bader? He's from there. Okay. And that's all she wrote. It's just a tough thing when you go, oh boy, look at the prelims. Oh boy, a minus 800 favorite. No, 2 minus 800 favorites. Is that minus 1100? It doesn't matter in the scheme of things. When it's all mismatches, it's hilarious, it's awful, and it's just, why? Respect my time. Me as a media member, me as a fan, Bellator. If you're going to have us sit down for 6.5 hours and watch your product, give us a product that is worth watching. With respect to the fighters included, Lucas Brennan, the sky's the limit for this kid. He's 21 years old, great nickname, great dad, really good talents, really cool chokes, and they give him a 500 guy. This is not interesting. It's not compelling TV. And I think that makes me hurt more than anything. So Bellator 273, this makes me hurt. And that's your show.
Any other thoughts on the Bellator card before we wrap things
point
up?
out cards that are interesting, please. I would be okay with you pointing out interesting things I skipped over. I'm not trashing it all the way if you have
this is the first time in Benson Henderson's career that he's been this big an underdog. He's only been worse than a 2-1 underdog twice in his career. But the other time he won, it was Donald Cerrone in WEC.
You
Maybe
are
there's
correct,
some
sir.
upset upside there.
You are really
I'm
correct,
just
sir.
joking. There's no upset upside there. He's toast.
There's not. Well, Benson Henderson's only 38.
Well, as a 39-year-old, I can tell you that is not in your favor in that weight class. So, by the way, I'm definitely not in that weight class anymore. So, all right, fellas. So let's go ahead and wrap things up because I don't really think it's that. I mean, Vitor Belfort said some silly
Stupid
stuff
shit.
about
More stupid shit. Vitor Belfort isn't.
combat being being an Olympic sport. Okay, man.
I don't even think Triad Combat knows the rules of its own sport.
Yeah, like come on, now. we're just getting ridiculous. Like, when does Vitor have like the crazy hair again?
Oh, I sure hope he has the cross in there. And
like that's the only visual I want of Vitor Belfort saying something stupid like that. He has to have the mullet with like the cross shaved to the side of his head, and going on about dinosaurs and lions or whatever he talks about. That's the only way I'll accept Vitor Belfort saying that.
The atmosphere is too high, bro.
All right, so let's go ahead and wrap things up. Remember to like, subscribe, share, tell a friend to tell a friend, tell that friend to tell 10 more friends. You can catch Ben and Jay on Sherdog.com. You can catch Elia probably here next week screaming and grabbing the microphone. And you can catch Mike on My MMA News and his podcast as well. We'll leave a link in the description to his work. So stay beautiful, stay positive, stay sexy. I'll see you when I see you. Peace.